It's here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Learners Weekly Wrapped video podcast. My name is Kyle, and I'm Associate Product Manager at Join Learners.
Oh, is it my turn? I'm Ray. I'm a Product Manager at Join Learners. Nice to meet you. Both of us previously used to be researchers.
Yeah, both of us. You were a researcher for longer than I was. I kind of had like a year, and I got shifted around.
Well, I mean, we're still kind of researchers. We still do research. It's just not our full-time role anymore. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to sort of like dip your feet into both areas of product.
Very, very, very interesting. It's cool to get shifted around sometimes because you learn a lot of new things. Yeah. So I guess we'll start off by going over what this is. We wanted to create something where we could sit down and go over all of the community offerings we have during the week. I think that we do quite a few things during the week. Not everyone gets to catch everything. Sometimes, the great learners content slips through your fingers, but we're here just to sit, chat about it, give everyone the recap, and maybe afterwards you go and you rewatch some things you missed. Yeah. I guess I'll start off by talking about our drop-ins this week. We've been doing drop-in sessions on Twitter Spaces all week, twice a day. And they've been a really great opportunity to actually get to talk to people in our community, as well as get to meet people who weren't necessarily part of our community beforehand. We had a really... Oh, sorry, were you about to say something?
Oh, no, I just wanted you to remind me what the topics were.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually had a few great conversations this week. We talked about everything from building trust on your remote teams to regulating yourself while working from home. We stepped outside of the work from home realm and we talked about junior researcher faux pas or just any faux pas you might have had earlier in your career. I think that's always really funny to talk about because I'm still really early in my career, so I'm a little uncomfortable talking about my recent slip-ups. But that was a great conversation. Something that really stuck with me was the conversation about building trust on remote teams. Which it kind of speaks to the situation we're in right now because we work really closely with each other, but we've never met in person.
Yeah, I only know you on screen, Kyle. I don't know what your real life face looks like. Could be really different. You might not recognize me on the street.
That's crazy to think about sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I think I see you Monday to Friday pretty often. And I think I could walk down the street and not recognize you.
For sure. This is totally off tangent. Sorry for interrupting. But this is similar to because we've both done a video for the platform, right? You did your salary video and I did a video on running an alpha and beta program. And I was watching myself on screen. I was like, is that what I look like to other people? Is that recorded face what I look like to other people? Because I hardly recognize myself. But yeah, it's a little different seeing someone on screen in a video as opposed to, in person with your own eyes.
Yeah. I feel like, Ray, do you wear glasses? You wear glasses when you're out and about.
Yeah, I do wear glasses, but I never wear glasses when I'm working because it strains my eyes. So outside, you'll see me with glasses.
See, that's the big difference maker. I wouldn't recognize you if I saw you with glasses on.
All right, well, okay, I have my glasses right here. There.
Okay.
I've been trying to look like a Harry Potter when I wear them.
That's good. Now I have the data in my mind. I'll be able to track your face now. But yeah, when we're talking about building trust on remote teams, it was really interesting because it's all of the things that you would do with your regular team. Reaching out to people, making sure that everybody's involved in the conversations, putting things in public channels, just regular things that you do to actually build trust on a team. But it's interesting to think about how we aren't necessarily primed or trained to do those things remotely. Like it's weird sometimes to send the Slack message. It's like, I hope you're having a good day. I think those are little things that really help you build rapport with your teammate and just make it easier to create that open channel of conversation.
Yeah. I also find that like this is just me jumping in on the remote stuff, but sometimes like when you send something over Slack and you ask like, how are you doing just because you're curious, like I don't know, like does it come off not as you intended? Does it come off more as an interrogation as opposed to that friendly tone you want to have? So like there is always that like, how does my written tone sound over Slack, for example, or email as opposed to, in person, face to face, where you could be chatting next to a water cooler or in the kitchen while you're drinking coffee, which is just I feel like it's easier to tell when a conversation is casual in person, I feel.
Yeah.
You're asking about feelings in particular. Yeah.
I agree with you. Tonality is so hard to pick up with via text. And I think some channels of conversation prime your brain to get very serious and overanalyze things.
Yeah.
When you're on Slack, you're usually I really like the ABC juice, by the way.
It's in a Starbucks bottle, so it's fancy.
Very fancy.
People are curious. ABC juice is just like a mixture of apple, beet, and carrot juice. It's actually not that bad. I'm not a huge fan of the texture, but that's because I've never really liked smoothies. But the taste is not that bad. Okay. For my TED Talk.
What was I saying? But yes, I think that when you're on when you're on Slack, usually when you read things on Slack, you're reading them very closely, right? So I think when you get the "How are you doing" on Slack, you're like you start reading that 3-word message very closely, but there's not much going on there.
Yeah. Or especially when it's coming from like, well, for example, let's say it's coming from your boss and they might actually just be curious simply how you're doing. But when it's like done over Slack, sometimes you're missing that context, and it could be like, well, like, what do you mean? How am I doing? Are you asking me how am I doing? How am I feeling about this project? Is there like a specific response you want from me? So I found that those two situations, like when your boss or someone who is in a high, I don't know if it's like higher position than you, or like someone who, I guess, like who is overseeing your work, asks you how you're doing over Slack and in person is very different.
I agree. I think a good way to mitigate that came up in the drop-in is cadence. Talking to people often, talking to people on a regular basis. If there's a cadence of doing that, then it's less weird. You're just less sensitive to it. But yeah, it's very interesting how we really just have to do the same things that we would do in an office environment on remotely, and we can build similar levels of trust. I think that the five love languages talk on the platform does a great job talking about this. It just really reminds you, like, just be a human being, reach out to people, build connections, and then teamwork, professional work gets a lot easier.
Let me actually continue talking, Kyle, while I find that video.
Oh, I was done talking for a second, but if we were talking about something else, I think that another really great conversation we had was in regards to early mistakes you make in your career. And it's very interesting how I think a lot of the mistakes that people make in their careers, like the noticeable, memorable ones, are around organizational and administrative tasks.
Yeah.
Forgetting to invite people to calendar invites, forgetting to add meetings to Google Calendar events. Just a little administrative task are the things that a lot of people look back on like their first year and like, yeah, I wish I did that differently. I wish I had a little bit more sense back then.
Is there anything in particular that, I don't know, was there a situation That happened to you, Kyle?
I've done it multiple times. Multiple times. I've reached out to people on the team and asked, when are you available for a meeting? Made the calendar invite, forgot to invite them. I sit in the Google Meet by myself for 50 minutes. Like, why are you ghosting me?
And then you realize you never added them.
Never added them.
Mm-hmm.
Or the
Yeah.
oh,
Go ahead.
continue.
Oh, I was just thinking back to when I was more of a junior, and it was like four or so years ago. My memory's not that great. I can't think of any specific examples. I'm sure I made a ton of mistakes though. I think it's like one of my issues would have been is this the appropriate conversation to be talking about this right now? Or were there conversations in which I could have maybe like saved that information for later or for like a different time? I don't know. I feel like I could have been a bit more conscious there.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that. That is something I'm still trying to figure out, when to say things.
Mm. Yeah.
Sometimes you want to save. It's so weird. I think this is specifically a research problem,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you want to save like a nugget for a specific conversation, and it comes out in another one, and it kind of loses the impact that it would have had in the other in the appropriate conversation.
Yeah. Or sorry, let me close my door. I'll be right back. Or it could be like where maybe you brought it up too early, or maybe you brought it up and there's not enough context, and then it loses steam. It didn't have the impact that it could have if you had provided the appropriate context, and it wasn't just this like one-off insight that came up in a conversation. Because like those one-off insights sometimes are very impactful, sometimes are very not interfering per se, but like it's like it's easily forgotten when you don't provide enough of that setup when you're sharing insights, I found.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much so, how do you present the knowledge? It plays a big factor in how impactful it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if anybody would like to contribute to the conversations, we do drop-ins on Twitter Spaces every day. Feel free to come chat with me. Yeah, I love talking to you folks. I love getting to meet the people that are part of our community. I think that it's an interesting bunch. You're all an interesting bunch.
You are also an interesting bunch.
Oh, that's debatable.
I can go over a bit in terms of the screenings that happened. So we had 2 talks being screened this week. It was A Researcher's Mindset by Janelle Ward, and Janelle Ward is, I believe, the lead user researcher at takeaway.com, at justeattakeaway.com. And the second talk that was screened this week was Make Your Research Come to Life with Empowering Illustrations by Irene Felgueres. I'm sorry if I butchered that name, Irene. And Mark Jansen. And Irene is a UX designer. Mark Jansen is a UX user experience specialist at Picnic International BB. So those are the 2 talks that were screened this week, and we screened them multiple times just so people had a chance to maybe drop into a particular time that worked best for them. Yeah, I'd say it was pretty interesting. Were you able to get a chance to also watch through those talks, Kyle?
Yes, I did. I actually found them both very, very useful. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the podcast either. But yes, I found that the researcher's mindset was very inspirational for me, because it really made me think about, when did I really become a researcher? Well, can I ask you that question, right? When do you think that you started to develop a researcher's mindset?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, I guess even when I guess you could say when I was younger, or just like the mindset that Janelle was referring to, like that really curious mindset. I've also had when I was a child. It's just like any sort of information that someone told me, or let's say like I was talking to someone, or it could be family, and then I all of a sudden like think, okay, but like why? And then I would pursue the answer behind the why, whether it's on Google or like I might do some more digging, poke my parents, continue to ask them why. I remember I used to annoy a lot of my high school teachers because I always asked why. I got the sense that a few of them didn't like me that much. But yeah, I asked a lot of whys growing up. And I feel like that could have contributed to sort of like the researcher's mindset that I have to constantly ask why.
Yeah.
What about you, Kyle?
Uh, I have very much so same experience. I think it came up at a young age, asking why too much. Um, yeah, I think that children who ask why, a lot of the times we discourage the behavior, but it's a good sign. Curiosity, just wondering why are things happening? Why do you do this? Why do you do it that way?
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are all great questions that collectively we should ask more.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a lot of researchers are people who hold on to that childhood curiosity and just bring it into, and they focus it and bring it into like the professional space.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I mean, I had been thinking about this before because it came up in like previous workspaces that I've been in, but just to really be mindful of like the headspace that your stakeholders are in, and just to be empathetic towards them as well, because sort of like as the researcher, you're sort of like serving two parties. You are, you're making sure that the user's voice gets heard, but also you are trying to help out your stakeholders or your partners really. So you just have to like so as a user researcher in the past, sometimes I have forgotten how much of a stake my stakeholders had in that project. And sometimes, not saying like I wasn't trying to be insensitive or anything, but I feel like I could have maybe communicated the insights in a way that was a bit more sensitive towards like their time and effort that they spent on that project, just like so it's a good reminder to I guess remind yourself that stakeholders have feelings too. And they feel a particular way about the project for good reason. They've been working on it for a while, and it's hard not to be connected to something that you have been working on and you have a really deep personal stake in. So, yeah, I feel like that was a really good reminder just to constantly be thinking of. And now we're in that position, Kyle.
Oh yeah, that's
Let's
very
say
true.
if learners had a full-time user researcher, we would be one of the stakeholders. We'd be the product manager. So now we're sort of getting both sides of the view. It's interesting.
Wow, that's a crazy thing to think about. I never realized that I really hopped on the other side of the fence.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now we're still both on it because we're still
Yeah.
the ones who are conducting the user research as well. But yeah, it's interesting to think about. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If
I think
anyone else in the audience has ever been on both sides of the fence, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
yeah, I'm very curious about the experiences of researchers turned PMs because it's such a slight but drastic mindset shift, I think.
Mm-hmm. Wait, slight?
I I feel like it's slight in ways,
Mm,
but the ways in which it's slight, like shifting your perspective on how you look at metrics, which metrics are really important. Uh Even I think the way you would empathize with your users when attempting to empathize with your users, it's a very slight mindset shift, but
mm.
it drastically changes. I think it's a very drastic change, even though there's slight shifts. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, I agree with you. I can see how it can be like both slight but also drastic. Well, obviously, one of the big thing is like how much time you're able to dedicate to doing user research. Not saying that as PMs we're not doing any user research, but because of the fact that it's not the only thing you're working on, I found that as a user researcher, I had more time to work on like larger streams of projects at once. So like it would be like one major thing in chunks, whereas as a PM, I'm working on like multiple streams. So it's like instead of this one big one, I would have like four smaller ones going on at the same time. So it's like you have to shift your priorities in multiple different directions simultaneously, which I had a bit of I got took a bit of time for me to get used to at the start there when I first made the switch. Yeah.
That was very interesting to think about. I think PMs do focus more on research projects versus researchers where I think we gravitate towards actual programs. Even if we aren't intentionally doing it, we do a lot of research programs, or researchers do a lot of research programs. I don't know if I'm allowed to say we anymore. I might be gate kept from the
why not?
community.
We're
But
still,
yeah,
come on.
that's very true. I'm still a researcher who researches researchers.
Mhm. Awesome. Any other insights you learned from Janelle's talk personally?
I think that's about it from Janelle's talk.
Anyone in the audience has anything that they personally learned, we'd love to hear as well. What about for Make Your Research Come to Life with Empowering Illustrations, Kyle?
That spoke to me very heavily because of my constant battle with building good personas and just trying to figure out how to make the best possible personas. And I guess it was story time. I really attempted to make I'm trying my best to make some objective personas and not humanize them. And I ran into the issue of, oh yes, because they aren't human enough by trying to use like Roman gods, they're very easily forgettable to remember when it comes to remembering what the persona what the persona is actually describing, what the persona is actually linked to in terms of characteristics. I think that this specific talk about like using illustrations to make research come to life is very useful because images and illustrations are just so much easier for us to link back to knowledge, I think, especially for visual learners. So building cartoons, drawing cartoons, not building cartoons. Who builds cartoons?
Hey, some cartoonists might say they're building cartoons.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to offend anybody. But yeah, drawing cartoons, creating illustrations, I think that's a really great way to make your insights more memorable and just figure out visual ways to share information.
Yeah, what stuck with me was things like what I believe Irene mentioned when she was illustrating one of their personas or one of their customer types, and she called them the grocery managers. And the image was very, very visually telling of what kind of person a grocery manager would be. They'd be a person like super on the go. There'd be like, I believe the image had a path, and there was like, the person was multitasking, and it was very obvious as to sort of like the nature of that particular persona or that archetype. So, are we gonna get something similar, Kyle? Are we gonna get an upgrade?
I will try. I can't draw to save my life.
I can help. I can assist.
I was about to ask. I know you're artistically inclined.
Yeah. If we want to rework our personas, it can be like a little project we do on the side.
Oh, I think that would actually be a good idea. That might be a good side project for us.
And it would be good to give them like something similar to like grocery managers, where it's not detailed. It's not like referring to any sort of demographics. It's not like a pronoun or like any sort of particular name, but it's very telling of how they are and what they do. So yeah,
more descriptive personas, but not too descriptive where it leads to stereotyping. It is the Goldilocks issue.
Do you mind elaborating a bit?
Like not too hot, not too cold, just right.
Right.
Seems to be a constant struggle to figure out how to do things just right. There's always like that trade-off in terms of when you're doing anything. There's always a trade-off in terms of the methods and the path that you take to get to that end goal.
Yeah, but I mean, iteration's not bad. You try something, see the response. If it needs to be upgraded, you make the upgrade. Try it again. Yeah.
Iteration is fantastic. I love iteration. If I did something right the first time, I would be very suspicious. Very, very suspicious.
Awesome. So I can give a little quick high-level breakdown of maybe our schedule next week. Actually, if you want to take the drop-ins, Kyle, that might be helpful. So for next week, we've got a lot of videos being screened, and they are all throwbacks to older conferences. So, videos from UXRConf 2018 and 2019. We're going to spend the next couple of weeks screening videos from those. So if you missed out on any sort of conferences from the past, or if you're curious just to rewatch them because they're currently not up on the platform, we will be screening some throwback content next week. Stay tuned. Some of the talks are long, but they are quite interesting. It sort of brings me back to the time when I was there in person and conferences where like you could actually meet people, shake hands with them instead of having everything be virtual. So yeah, we'll be having a lot of throwback content, and we will be having a Q&A session next week as well for our weekly recap. We're going to have a super cool person on board who has agreed to do a Q&A with us, and our schedule will be released on Monday.
Oh, I like the cliffhanger. We aren't letting people know who the Q&A is with. And in terms of drop-ins next week, we will be doing drop-ins once again, twice every day, excluding Monday because it is a holiday. And they will be from the hours of 12 p.m. to 5 p.m., half an hour is twice a day. Oops, I just hit my mic.
Awesome. Cool. We know we set up an hour, but it's just gonna, like, we don't really have a super structured, or we're not gonna stick to some sort of rigid structure for these video podcasts every week. So, sometimes we might end early, and sometimes we might be having a casual chat, just letting people know that that'll be the structure of these podcasts moving forward. Anything else you want to discuss, Kyle? How did you feel about this first week of, Kyle-led community initiatives? As
so interesting.
Learners.
So interesting. It is so interesting to one, sit down and talk to people, and two, also to observe interesting trends and anomalies when you keep doing the same thing multiple times, but you're just changing the time of day that you're doing it. Really curious about all of the people out there who are on Twitter Spaces, just hopping into random spaces to have conversations.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic. The people who just naturally find us on Twitter Spaces. And also really curious about when is the best time for the Join Learners community to drop in for a chat. Always try to figure out when everyone can come in. And I just have so much fun learning from people in these like half-hour, very casual chats on Twitter Spaces. Yeah, it's just an enjoyable time. Just getting to have conversations with people. Yeah. I miss it so much before, in the simpler times where you can have conversations outside.
One day we'll get to see each other, Kyle. One day. COVID is over. Yeah, same thing with the screenings. It's just figuring out. It is a learning experience for us this week, just figuring out some of the best times that people are able to tune in. We're going to be trying some earlier morning times next week as well to see if that's better for some people, like the 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., things like that. Yeah, so if anyone has feedback, we'd love to hear in relation to times and screenings and, what we're doing when.
Yes. Oh, we also like to put it out there that we are taking applications. Well, we are taking requests from people who would like to host their own learners clubs. I believe that Ray has a link with her. Am I correct? Yes, I am correct. And
looking for it actually, but it's not on hand.
Yeah, well, we are taking requests from people who would like to host their own learners club. So if you would like to host a learners club for a specific demographic or location, or just you want to host a learners club, you have a great personality, you want to facilitate conversation, feel free to fill out the form in the chat as Ray finds it.
Do you remember where you put it, Kyle?
It's okay. Let me find it.
Thank you. And as while you're doing that, I'll just speak a little bit as to how Learners Club got started. Learners Club was actually a community-led initiative. So the first one is currently being led by Alyssa and Babs from the community. They are members of the Learners community, and it sort of came to be because they'd been watching these videos and they had really been wanting to discuss it with other people, but it's tough to sit down and find time to actually learn on an ongoing basis consistently. And it's easier to do when you're doing it with other people on an ongoing basis. And that's sort of how the idea of like a monthly learners club came about. And we had the first monthly learners club at the start of May, actually, on the first Thursday of May, and it was actually really good. Kyle, you and I were both a part of that learners club. I had a lot of fun talking to people, just discussing. We talked about 3 specific videos, all related to sort of like user research strategy and product strategy, and it was really interesting. We were chatting about the videos. We went off on some tangents that also were interesting, like how do you draft really good Slack messages? I actually got a lot of insights from that conversation. So that was cool. Yeah, and so like if you want to either start your own monthly learners club, or it could be a bi-weekly learners club, anything according to your preference, really, feel free to join or start hosting your own by filling out that form. Because I'm sure a lot of other members of the community who might have wanted to be a part of that first learners club at the start of May maybe weren't able to join because of the time zone, or because we weren't able to accommodate when they're most active. So yeah, having more learners clubs would be great.
Thank you very much, Ray. The link is now in the chat for anyone viewing. Anything else we'd like to share?
No, I feel like we've covered the bulk of what happened this week. Again, this week was a primarily learning week for us, so not as full of events as, for example, the following week. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. These were a lot of new initiatives that we were doing all in one go, so it's a lot of learning to be had this week. Yeah.
Oh, a lot of learning on Join Learners.
For sure. Here, let me put up a banner. There you go. For everyone watching. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day. And if you are listening to a recorded version of the podcast, make sure to check us out at joinlearners.com. It's free. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Awesome. See you again next week.
Bye-bye. Cue the outro music.